Good luck, everybody. Welcome to the Hashkafa Hotline. As is, will be our custom starting tonight. Uh, you're invited to, on the chat bar, type in a question, and we'll deal with it in real time or as soon as we can. Yes, so we got our first question right here. Matter of pikuach nefesh, to not done with the meat. That seems to be the consensus. Why do I allow us to shop in the supermarket? Yeah. I wouldn't call this exactly a question in Jewish philosophy, but right. But let's put this in perspective. And some perspective. It's not even a matter of perspective. Pikuach nefesh, the halacha that it's doche kola Torah kula, right? That is an ironclad fact. That is not an issue that's in any way debatable whatsoever. Period. Not only that, even suffix pikuach nefesh is doche kola Torah kula. Even on a suffix pikuach nefesh, you're allowed to. Do things, now, what constitutes a suffix, whatever. A lot of this has already been agreed upon by most, if not all, poskim, and that's not the issue over here, right? It's the issue is like this: who guides us when it's a matter of pikuach nefesh, right? The halacha is clear, right? It's doche kol haTorah kula, right? Except, of course, for the three cardinal sins of avodah zarah, gilia rice, and shvichas damim. Those over there, if it's pikuach nefesh, these things you have to die rather than transgress. Right. So, other than the three cardinal sins, so the halacha is clear, and not in my humble opinion, up to there might be dissent on some of the very subtle details. What is the issue over here is right, is the doctors are the ones that guide us in what how to handle the pikuach nefesh, right? They're also the ones who tell us if something is pikuach nefesh or not. Unless Chazal have a particular Masorah about something, we always follow the medical advice. So now we are following, as I understand it. No one asked me, and no one asked me to make the decisions. Thank God, other people stood, took initiative in consultation with the doctors. And of course, when you go into the supermarket, you go in with your gloves, you go in with your mask, you take the safety precautions that are recommended by the medical officials, and you're not putting yourself in mortal danger by going to the supermarket. If you were, you shouldn't go. Forget about halacha, right? If you're putting yourself in mortal danger, of course, don't go to the supermarket. Right? How can you? It's not an issue of halacha. It's an issue of reality, meaning you, vis-a-vis yourself. You should be concerned of your own safety. It is the medical experts that the Rabbanim have consulted with, which the communities are abiding by, have said you could go to the supermarket under circumstances like here where we live, Far Rockaway, 5 pounds. You have to wear a mask. You have your temperature taken at the entrance. And that's called safe conduct. Right? Now, they, by the same token, have told us that we cannot have minyanim because that's not called safe conduct. So now, what is the difference is not a question you should be addressing to me. You should be asking them. But my guess is that the doctors are telling the rabbis to forbid all minyanim, right, is because they don't believe that people will take the guidelines seriously when davening in a minyan. That is my educated guess, as that is the reason why. But this is a question to address to the medical experts why they see that delineation. But the rabbis are doing what the doctors recommend. This is the recommendation of the doctors, right? And the doctors could deem it, safe to go to the supermarket under the conditions that, as I see supermarkets abiding by, right? And the doctors think that the minyanim are too dangerous. I guess my guess is they don't believe that the congregants will really stay away from each other like they should. All right. That's the best I could do for you. All right. Any other questions? Because we have a we always pick a issue of discussion to keep us busy. As the questions come, or don't come. So to make up for the gap, we begin a discussion. So it's interesting. You opened up with the issue of safety. So now the president has gone on record as having said a few times that the close down of the economy, which we're doing to, as the asker said, because of pikuach nefesh, right? The close down economy could be worse, right, than the actual virus itself. Which, of course, anything the president says gets slammed by the left-wing media. Right? If he would say that the sun is shining at 12 o'clock noon, right, he would be attacked for that also. That's not a question. But the question is, we who have nothing against the president and have actually found him to be a very strong leader in the past 3 years in general and during these turbulent times in particular, right? So what do we think about that statement? I think it's 100% true, right? It's really implied by the question that we got on the screen before, right? We say it's dangerous to go to a supermarket or it's dangerous to dine with a minion, right? So it doesn't mean that anyone who definitely goes there will die, right? So you open yourself up to danger, and halacha tells us that we may transgress in order to avoid pikuach nefesh, right? But it's not vadai pikuach nefesh, right? But safek pikuach nefesh also is something that we take very, very seriously, and we do whatever we can to avoid. But it's a suffix, right? If you shut down the economy and you definitely bring poverty and horrible situation, that's also going to ultimately lead to pikuach nefesh, and the media, not just to attack, the president is kind of brushing this aside, right, about the dangers of shutting down the economy, keeping people shuttered in their homes. They're not just brushing this aside, right? They're actually attacking anyone who wants to, with reasonable precaution, reopen the economy, right? And sadly, there definitely is an agenda there. I read an article, Georgia, against the president's wishes, I should point out, against the president's wishes, Georgia opened up some businesses, this Erev Shabbos. Some things that I was also, don't think be a big maven, but I was quite surprised that Brian Kemp, went to open up, gyms and hair salons and and nail salons and massage parlors, things that require direct contact, direct bodily contact. You definitely can't keep 6 feet away. I'll deal with your next question in a minute. I see your next question on the screen. Just give me a minute to finish the thought. All right. So now, he says he's consulting with his doctors, and like I said, if that's the case, that's what halacha wants from us: consult the doctors, and we should be, we don't want to impose poverty and unnecessary suffering on people. Let the people work if it's safe. Anyways, he was attacked, in the liberal media for being a racist. Crazy conspiracy theory that he knows that the black people will go to the malls and the black people will therefore get COVID-19 and die. And that's why he's reopening the economy, as if only black people will go, and it's for the purpose of killing black people. And CNN, in my opinion, that, posting some ridiculous rant like that, to me, I always consider them fake news. But to me, that they lose all credibility. That's a crazy rant. What do you mean? He's opening it for everybody, not just for black people. So he's opening to ensnare black people that they should get COVID-19. But why? Why is the left wing media like cooking up conspiracy theories? If the man's only sin is he's opening too early, that's because racist. Like they want to blow the racist whistle. Why? I think they have, unfortunately, and they've been quite transparent about it in some cases. They really want to collapse the economy, and they want to collapse society. And they're doing it in the guise of pikuach nefesh, misusing the idea to bring upon us, things that could be equally as lethal. Poverty is lethal. If you can't get the proper nutrition and proper services, you die, right? Poverty is lethal, right? The destruction of society is lethal, and they want that, right? Some because it's the best chance of getting Donald Trump not reelected, because people take out their frustration on whoever's in leadership. But they also have a sinister plot to reset society. They want to collapse society and reset it as a communist, socialist, left-wing regime. Well, we hope so. Even as human beings, we should daven, right? That everyone in Georgia is safe. All these states open up early. They just humanly, it's the right thing to do. To daven, everyone should be safe, should be healthy. But their success is going to lead the way out of this shutdown that people are trying, for lack of a better word, profit from politically, and bring a terrible collapse on society for a purpose of refashioning it as a left-wing socialist society. Hashem Yirachim. Right. Anyways, our celery soda. That's a great name. So celery soda wants to know about celebrating Yom Ha'atzmaut. Okay. Far bigger people than me have debated this issue. Who am I to put my head between the mountains? Right, but as this is actually a forum to discuss Jewish philosophy. So let me talk about the different sides of the issue. We're talking, philosophically, we're talking in what's called a detached academic way. And by the way, I have to tell you guys something. I always speak my mind. And in my, I'm not that old, but I'm not, but I'm not a kid either. Nara Yisi, I wouldn't say Gam Zakanti, Baruch Shem, but Yitzhak Hashem, on Me'av Esrim. But I have seen the pendulum swing on this back and forth. Like this issue of Yom Ha'atzmaut is, I've seen the same people, decades ago say Hallel, and then it became out of vogue. The yeshivish thing became to, rant on the Medina, and then the pendulum swings again. I've seen it swing and swing and swing. The issue is complex. So let's try to break it down. So first, let's draw one line, to make some semblance of order out of the discussion. Let us say like this: that even if we view the whole coming back to Eretz Yisrael, which is a process that began over 100 years ago, longer, if we view the whole process of coming back positively, we view the Medina as a positive development, and I will discuss that. Right? Even if we view it all positively, there still is a halachic issue of what makes the criteria of saying Hallel. What meets the criteria when something warrants the saying of Hallel, right? You have a baby boy, so you make the bracha batov v'ameitiv. You don't say Hallel, right? You don't just say Hallel because you're happy, right? There's the there is the serious halachic question. If you're very excited and viewing very positively the advent of the state of Israel, right? You still have to make sure it meets the criteria of being a event that warrants the saying of Hallel. There's one thing, one serious halacha issue, and that's halacha issue. And there were tshuvas written, and it was and this could actually, believe it or not, be, approached in a very detached academic halachic way, without screaming, without shouting, whether the founding the Medina Israel is an event that you should say Hallel. Now, by the same token, you could have a very, calm, level-headed discussion with, riots going both ways about setting, as it were, a Yom Tov, right? Do we have the authority to make a Yom Tov in this day and age? Well, I know, Chazal gave us Hanukkah and Purim, right? Can we set a day, or is that already, is there some type of precedent in halacha that, anytime a big thing happens, it's like automatically a special day does not require a takana of Chazal, which we don't have Chazal to set these takanas anymore, right? And there's a Meiri, it's actually the Meiri, it's a Meiri in Psachim, and says if something big happened to you every day, on a particular day, an amazing miracle, you could make you can make that day your private day of redemption. There's a Meiri that says, you could do that, right? And the question is, but even so, if you could have, like, I'll give you an example. Now, we don't make it a Yom Tov, but this is this is obvious. This is easy. This everyone would agree to. Okay, I had a miracle with my son. When he was an infant. Just not even 2 years old. He was run over by a Mazda MPV. That's like that's a minivan. It's run over. It's less than a year, and I saw it with my own eyes. Almost fainted on the spot. Miraculous recovery. Miraculous. Nothing short of miraculous. So every on that day, every year since on that day, and it happened actually during this time during Sfiyas Omer. It happened on Gvura Sheba Gvura. The first day after the last day of Pesach. First, Isru Chag Pesach in Chutz La'aretz. We make a Suda every single year, but we don't say Hallow because the criteria of Hallow has to be a miracle that happens to most of the Jewish people. Right? Okay, a singular person that has a miracle doesn't say Hallow, right? But we mark the day, and we don't call it a Chag or anything like that. So what we do is definitely appropriate, and no one would disagree with. There's a real halachic issue of you declare a Chag, okay, and does the Medina, even if you view the whole thing positively, does such an event of establishing a state warrant saying Hallow, right? Does it fit the takana of what it says in Tzachim Kuf Yud Zayin that that's called the Geula from a tzara? They're called the Geula from a tzara. They just proclaim the state on that day. Right, so we could have this discussion, in a, even two very for lack of a better word, pro-Zionist rabbis can have this discussion, and still, even though they both agree, Medina is a tremendous thing, they can still disagree whether it meets the criteria of saying Hallel or not, whether you can make a Chag or not. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading I'm getting closer to my screen to read a question just came in. Oh man, yeah, an interesting question just came in right now. That and it's a fascinating question. I just want to deal with it because take a second to deal with it because the answer is very short. And that is like this, that, the Theorem of the Gaon, I don't know how it got officially annulled or withdrawn. I've always thought about it, and I never followed through on researching it, right? But I do know that it cannot be in any way still halachically binding. It just can't be. Because people who are big followers of the Gaon, right, including descendants of Rav Chaim Volozhner, right? Chaim Volozhner's descendants, who are the Soloveitchiks, right, the Briskers, they did shidduchim with Hasidim. They didn't just cooperate; they did shidduchim. So people who would take something from the Goyim very, very, very seriously have put down their bows and arrows and even intermarried with Hasidim, right? Reb Chaim, at Chassidish Mechutanim. What are we talking about? The Beis Halevi, his first wife was Chabad. That shidduch didn't work out well. But his first wife had Chabad leanings, and he was he was in a Hasidic type town. So if the Briskers, are not Choshesh for the Cher, right? So I can't believe, and they're descendants of Chaim Volozhiner. Tom of Gon, so I can't believe anyone believes that the Cherem is still intact. But you know what? Believe Neder, come back. We do this on Thursdays at 10 p.m. Come back and I'll discuss it. All right. But let me go back because I had very little to say about that. So let's go back to the larger topic about Yom Ha'atzmaut. So like we were saying before, even two rabbis that, view the whole developments of the coming back to Zion and the founding of Medina positively and as footsteps towards the Gula, even two rabbis who both believe that, but still have a lively, spirited debate about Hallel or whether we can make a Chag. And because there's definite criteria for Hallel and definite criteria of making a Chag, and that is a serious question. So now, case in point. Rabbi Soloveitchik, of Yosher Bar Soloveitchik from Boston, of Yeshiva University, who, in his words, he has a whole book on this, Chamesh Roshas, his 5 lectures to the Mizrahi. He defected from the Aguda camp, and he was in Aguda family when Aguda was vehemently anti-Zionist. Aguda kind of, they softened their approach to the state when the state became a reality. But the Aguda and the Eidah Haredis, they were, 2 peas in a pod. They were together. When the state got founded, they kind of jumped ship. Yeah. And they had a more conciliatory approach to Medina Israel because, they participated in the political process, right? So, Rabbi Soloveitchik, who jumped ship from the Aguda to the Mizrahi, has a book, Chamesh Droshos, the lectures they gave in Mizrahi explain why, he did it, why he made his move, right? He was very, very nervous about the Hallel business. How do I know? Even though I read it in Rav Hershel Schechter's Ace Talmud Sefer, Nefesh Harav. He says he was very, very nervous about it. So the way they do it without a bracha, there's not much harm. It's you would think. Let me get to what it says in that Nefesh Harav, right? By Rav Hershel Schechter, right? One of his big talmidim. So you would think that without a bracha, what's the harm? It's just Tehillim. But no, he was even very nervous about it, as years went on, very nervous about the idea of saying Hallel even without a bracha, because there is a chazal that says, anyone who says Hallel every day, it's like he curses. Right? So maybe if you give me a moment to explain what that chazal means, right, that's mamash to say Hallel on a day that doesn't warrant Hallel. Right, is like Kil Macharif McGavin. He was afraid, that if Yom Ha'atzmaut doesn't really warrant Hallel, so even without a bracha, but if you're Machavin L'Shem Hallel, right? So it's Harez Macharif McGavin. So let me explain that Chazal in general. Why is it if you say Hallel on a regular Tuesday when nothing special happened, there's no Chag, right? No nace that happened to all Klal Yisrael, no big Hatzalah. Why it's why is the problem hard from Megadif? Because since nothing exceptional happened, Hallel is for the exceptional, right? Now, so just a plain day, on a plain day, calling it exceptional is kind of like applauding for when a mentally challenged person does what normal people do all the time. It's kind of an insult to give lavish praise. As the Maral says, you don't give lavish praise for something that's ordinary. The proper response for the ordinary is thank you. So we do hoda'ah, we thank Hashem regularly. The last 3 brachas of Shemona Esrei are all hoda'ah, right? right? They're all, that's their function. You thank Modin, right? So you never take anything for granted. You say thank you, right, for anything that's ever given to you. But you do Hallel for something that's exceptional, right? And so what Hashem does, that's quote unquote normal. So of course we're appreciative. We'd say thank you. But if you start applauding for the normal, as it is, I'm paraphrasing around, it's like how people, applaud when someone mentally challenged does something normal that, if you would applaud for me for saying 2 + 2 is equal to 4, right? I would be very insulted, right? Because you're implying I'm mentally challenged as if for me I did something exceptional and I outdid myself. So that's tomorrow, what I just said. That's why if you say hello every single day, or on a regular day, or from a Gadif, Rabbi Soloveitchik, it says in Nefesh Harab, and he was pro-Zionist. He was, like I said, he defected from Aguda to Mizrahi, and he was very nervous of even Hallow without a Bechhofer. Shem Hallow on the tzad that the day doesn't really warrant Hallow. You're machar from a Gadif. So that's what I said. The issue of Hallow, or the issue of making a Chag, it's something even to, for lack of a better word, pro-Zionist rabbis. I don't have a way of describing it. I don't have a better term. They could have a spirited debate whether, even if they could believe it's the best thing around, still have a machlokas whether it meets the criteria of Hallow or it meets the criteria of setting a Chag. Okay, so now that being said, right? There are, generally speaking, right? Most authorities and we have many sources in our in our literature throughout the ages that talk about that it was foretold that even before the end of days, right, the Jewish people would be streaming back to Israel. Right, it was not going to be that Mashiach in one grand swoop will take us. It was foretold that we would come back even beforehand, and then Mashiach would finish it. And that, most people viewed it as a positive thing. I could say that safely, so long as you don't cause any political unrest. Now, so let's try to put this in perspective. The theoretically, and we not theoretically. Let's take it like this. I'm sorry. This forum. None of this was pre-prepared, so you'll forgive me if if I'm deciding on a better way to express it, because it's all off the cuff anyway. Didn't know this question was coming about Yom Ha'atzmaut, right? Theoretically, the way I understand, after having done research on this years ago when it was a hot topic, to me, as a adolescent growing up, having this conflict, growing up in the young Israel of West Hampton where they said Hallow, and then going to my yeshiva where they wouldn't acknowledge the day even, right? So I did at the time a lot of reading. It seemed, so let's start with the historical fact. Coming back to Zion did not start with the secularists. It started with the Talmidei HaGaon and the Talmidei Baal Shem Tov, interestingly enough. And by the way, there was some type of, from what I read, the communities, when they met in Israel, the Hasidim, there was some type of interaction there, peaceful, from what I understand. They probably kept their distance also because it was still pretty fresh. I read somewhere that Rabbi Shosh Glover and Menachem Mendel from Vitebsk, who led the Aliyah, I understood that, I read somewhere that they had a certain peaceful interactions. You had to. They didn't keep the machlokas burning in Israel. That's for sure, even if they did establish separate communities. So that's mentioning that in light of the question about the Hasidim and the Misnaim. So really, when it was still pretty fresh, they, in certain instances, they put down their bows and arrows. Like in Israel, the Talmidei HaGaon community and the Hasidic community, from what I understand, if they kept to themselves, they didn't make one big shul, but they still kind of cooperated with each other. From what I read, when they had interactions even though they also sent their own separate meshulachim to collect for their communities. But they weren't. They had other challenges. They were too busy to fight. They didn't fight. Um, Interesting to note. I'll tell you another interesting piece of trivia. The Yerushalmi Lavush, right? The golden bekisha, and the shtreimel, strange combination. And it's common to both Hasidim and non-Hasidim, the old Yerushalmis. Yerushalmi Lavush, right? Just another sign of how the melting pot, in a certain extent, started even earlier in Israel. Where did that come from? So now anyone with any just any taste understands that the Yerushalmi Lavush is you could tell it's kind of Arabic in nature. It's a wrap. It's a wrap, and especially with the gartel that keeps it closed. It's not European. They didn't bring that from Europe, right? They picked it up in Israel. Where did it come from? So here's an interesting piece of trivia that the community in Yerushalayim, right, was predominantly Sephardic. Now, they were kind of invaded even before the Hasidim and the Gronics got there. Even prior, as I understand, prior to that, there was the famous Aliyah of Rabbi Yehuda Chassid. And some, I don't know, I'm not going to get into the historical speculation whether Yehuda Chassid himself was a follower of Shabtai Tzvi or not, but there was a guy, Chaim Malach, who was like one of the big shots in that movement, who was a Shabtai Tzvi. Anyway, so whether that reflects on Yehuda Chassid or not, I can't tell you. Some people think yes. I don't know. I've heard only good things about Yehuda Chassid, but this Chaim Malach was a Shabtai Tzvi. On that, there is adequate documentation. Anyways, they came, and the famous Churbas of Yehuda Chassid, they came and they racked up a great deal of debt, and that community fell apart. And now the Sephardic community was left, the Pasha wanted the Sephardim to pay up. And the Sephardim said, listen, it's the Ashkenazim that made all that debt. Ashkenazim. And they left town. Don't make the Sephardim suffer for the Ashkenazim, the debt that they incurred. Okay. So I think the Pasha, got, somewhat convinced. I don't know the finer details, whether he forgave the whole loan or not. He said, okay, only Sephardim live in Yerushalayim. Any Ashkenazi comes to Yerushalayim, so either he's got to pay up the debt or it's forbidden, something like that. So Ashkenazim had to masquerade as Sephardim. You get that? It's like the opposite of what goes on in Israel these days. I lived in Israel for 22 years. So you have the Sfaradim that are mishtaknezim. They, Sephardim, masquerade as Ashkenazim to get into the Beis Yaakovs, to get into certain yeshivas. Believe it or not, back in the old days, it was the other way around. You want to get into Yerushalayim, you have to pretend to be Sephardic. Right? Where it came from? They put on the this lavush that's kind of Arabic, Middle Eastern in nature. They were masquerading as Sephardim. No joke. Of course, they made it a little bit distinctive, they made it their own. They made, as I say, they made it their own. That's where it came from. Interesting point on that, once we're on the topic, and then we'll get back to talk a little bit more about Yom Ha'atzmaut if no one has any other questions. But interesting point on that, as we know, us Ashkenazim, come Simchas Torah, be it the Hasidish, be it the Misnagdish, again, because everyone wound up in Yerushalayim. Those communities in Tzfat and Tveria, they had an earthquake, they went to Yerushalayim, after the earthquake and the whole terrible uproar that was up north. So Hasidim and the Misnagdim all masqueraded as Sephardim, hence the Yerushalmi Lavush, and they made it so they had their own separate jewels, but they they all came into Yerushalayim, Ashkenazim masquerading as Sephardim, because those were the conditions they had to meet in order to be able to get into Yerushalayim. Okay, so so it's interesting, both us Ashkenazi, Misnagdim, and Hasidim. Simchas Torah, we start saying, these Sephardi Piyutim, and Adir Keben Amram, right, the Mipi Kale, right, and other Sephardic stuff. Where'd it come from? So I heard this from the Boston Rebbe, Zechron Livracha. Of course, in my 22 years in Eretz Yisrael, I lived in Beit Shemesh, right? And so the Bostoner of Beit Shemesh, right, was the son of Rav Moshe Horowitz, right? So the Bostoner of Beit Shemesh was the nephew, right, of the Bostoner Rebbe in Harnof, was the Boston from Boston. So he said, this word happened, because, year round, you could make do with your minion of 10, 20 people. Simchas Torah, it's not geschmack. It's not geschmack to just dance 10, 20 people, right? You want a big island, make it Leibniz. So they used to go to the Sfardim. They used to go to the Sfardim and dance together. And that's how the Sephardi Putim for Simchas Torah, made it into, both Hasidic and Misnagdic circles. And then, and then because people went back and forth, from Eretz Yisrael to Europe and to America to collect money, right? Or sometimes a family had to make Yerida. That's how Quran also worldwide became the worldwide minhag that there is, because of. Okay, so the initial, as it were, or the infiltration of Sephardi Piyutim of Simchas Torah in Ashkenazic, both Hasidic and Messianic communities. It started in Yerushalayim all those years ago when there were these small masquerading communities. So to make a gishmak for Simchas Torah, they did it together to Sephardim, and from there it spread to Europe and to America. Right. But anyway, so going back to, no one's protesting, so I'm just going to ramble on. So going back to the question at hand. So going back to Eretz Yisrael really started with by Talmid Gaon and the Talmidim of the Mezritcher Magid, right? And I'm sure the Satmar Rav or the Minchas Elazar would not see anything wrong with that. The question, so and that would also fit, with the Ramban, so even though they kind of went, they kind of, posturing. They decided that the Ramban, who says it's a mitzvah to go to Eretz Yisrael, the halach's not like the Ramban, or the Rambam doesn't hold like the Ramban. I honestly believe that happened because of posturing, unfortunately, right? But I don't think they would have any problem. The problem is that two things happened over here. The truth is that it was that as it became larger and larger in number, right? So there was, and actually the two things are actually one, right? It started causing political unrest, right? The Arabs getting nervous about this. Jews are coming to reconquer the land of Israel, which not just created a geopolitical problem and a problem of danger, right? It also was in violation of whatever the halachic standing is. I don't know. There's a Gemara Ksuvis, right? And it's a Medicine Shira Shirim, right? That Akoshu Gimel Shvus Yisrael, Akoshu made us swear 3 oaths. Now, where is that? Written in the Tanakh. Like, what does it mean we swore? What does it mean we swore? There's a big discussion in the poskim. In what way is it halachically binding? Right? It doesn't mean we swore. We swore we would not go en masse to Israel. We would not rebel against the nations of the world, and they also swore from their end not to oppress us too much. Right? So there's the one issue of being in violation of those oaths. The question is, what is the halachic standing of those? Another area that it's possible to have a halachic, cool-headed halachic discussion about the halachic standing of these 3 oaths in that Gemara Ksuvas, in that Medrash and Kira Shirim, right? We could have a clear-headed discussion about it. Even 2 anti-Zionists, could sit and argue about it. Are these shvuas? Is it just an agadita? The Avnei Nezer, I think it's in Yoreh Tafnun Balad. He says that these oaths were taken. What does it mean oath? It doesn't mean me and my body swore that. It was an oath. The neshama took in heaven, just like it says in Chazal. As I haven't seen this Avnei Nezer in years, but as I remember it, it's just like it says in Chazal. Before the neshama is put into the fetus, they take him in Gan Eden, show it's schar in Olam Haba, it's schar in Gan Eden, and they make him swear, Ti Tzadik Val Ti Rasha. So they also make so as it were, the neshama. So of course it's not binding on the body, It's not binding on the body because in body we never took that oath. It's like a shvua. A shvua means it's a oath of principle, not an oath of action. You understand the difference? Just like when you swore before you were born, you will be a tzaddik and you will not be a rasha, right? Right. You swore. Be it, so does that mean every time you do an avera, you're also chayev for shvuas bitui? You're over on bal yachal. No, of course not, because you never took that oath in body. So shvua doesn't mean Rabbi Nezer says this, and that's what he says. It's not in the poskim. It's not in the poskim. It's a sentiment. It's an intent. Just like every person wants to be a tzaddik. It's called that before he was born, he swore to be a tzaddik. That's Rabbi Nezer's approach. Rabbi Nezer was a chassidisher. The Sachachova Rebbe. But it does Satmar Rebbe held, oh God, this is like, it's for real. He took it very seriously. It's the first mimer of the Vayol Moshe, Mamar Shalosh Shavuos, right? So two anti-Zionists, because the Avnei Nezer, I don't know, nothing on record of him being pro-Zionist from what I remember. Right, so the Avnei Nezer and the Satmarov, and other people that agutistim, they have a clear machlokas. What is the standing of Shalosh Shavuos? Right, but nonetheless, there's also not taking away from the reality that a lot of there was unrest in the Holy Land. It came to a fever pitch, in 1929, the riots in where Hebron got, but it was all over the country at the time. People killed in that pogrom, and that, so it begs a question. We have so if we could get, let's say, all the rabbis on the same page, that coming back to Israel, according to some, is a necessary step to bring about the Gula. Kuzri says, and then and maybe the Satmar Rebbe would agree coming back on a one-by-one basis, and not causing any geopolitical tremors by coming en masse and conquering. He would be okay with it, right? Let's say. But then there comes the question that there was a violent response, right? So aside from the issue that it was, is there a problem with the Shalosh Shavuos or not? And we could have a discussion about the halach saying the Shalosh Shavuos, divorced of whether I'm pro the Medina or anti-Medina. We have a serious, detached academic discussion, right, about whether the Shalosh Shavuos, what is their standing in halacha, right? Interesting question, right? And just people have, biases if they're pro-Zionist or anti-Zionist, but it's like we said about Halo, we could have an academic discussion, separate from being pro-Zionist or anti-Zionist. We can have the same discussion about the Shalosh Shavuos. But there's nothing, the reality of the situation. A lot of people got killed. There are wars, right? So there's, the 1948 war. So like we put all the emphasis that we won the war. But you know how many casualties? Latrun, the terrible tragedy at Latrun by the War of Liberation. Yom Kippur, second. I was still in Israel during the second Lebanon war. Not pretty, really not pretty. And what were the big gains? So it becomes a question of attitude. Is the state of Israel really saving lives or not? To what extent? And there's also how the state of Israel, so depending on who's in office. It wasn't so much the state and so much as whoever was, sadly, that's another thing. There's a general problem in politics that the big corporate body will take credit for whatever's done by the man in the street, and also takes the blame for what's done by the man in the street. It's like the lefties, COVID-19 is Trump's fault, right? And if he doesn't get us out of it, the man in the street's going to take it out on Trump. It's not his fault. Right? The administration always gets the credit for when things are good, even though it may have nothing to do with them, and always takes the rap if things are bad, even if it's not their fault. And as something goes on, with the Zionist entity, people who identified as Zionists may not have been a organized effort for that. In some cases it was. Every case was different. They were very anti-religious and persecuted religious, and the refugees that came through Tehran, the refugees from the Holocaust, how they forcibly secularized them. So it's an issue. It's a complicated issue. You look at it as good, look at it as bad. There's so many different factors here, right? You know. So now, the truth is, I could, if we'd be stoic, be unemotional, I'd tell you like this. So don't say hello because it's a serious question. If you be pro-Zionist, it's still a serious question. Does, even if you view the Medina as positive, does the announcing of the Medina an event that meets the criteria to say hello? Like we said, Rabbi Soloveitchik was pro-Zionist, a real Mizrachist, you know, was very nervous about saying how he was out of breath. Right? He was very, very nervous about it. Rabbi Schechter, first Schechter writes his Nefesh Aram. Right? So, but it's a complicated issue. But on the other hand, as everyone will point out, the number one supporter of Torah in Israel, state of Israel, they give stipends. It's not as much as it used to be, but they give money for yeshivas. The taxpayer money goes to yeshivas. There's a famous Misrada that told the stipend that they get month in, month out. Of course, they raid the yeshivas, and the Avrechim. And I was there. I lived there for 22 years, and I have a son who's in Kollel there. Right? Complain about, they raid, and it's very uncivil, and they're very aggressive when they raid, and they want to see picture ID or check the numbers. So you talk about how they hate us and they're tough on us, but they also give you money, And the bottom line is they also defend you. So it's such a complicated situation, right? And it's a situation that doesn't stop being complicated because even the very pro-Zionists that put up with all the bad stuff that was happening at the beginning, like I said, with the Yaldei Tehran, right? The refugees that came through Tehran, all these refugees from Europe that were forcibly secularized. They were like real battles to save those neshamas and get them into yeshivas. Stuff that bad stuff that went on, which I don't know to what extent the Medina has to have that mark of shame on it. I don't know. I just don't know. I just don't know to what extent it was like ordered from above, or to what extent just the Jewish agency did it on their own, and the Medina just turned a blind eye. I don't know. The official administrative decisions. I don't know who made them at the time, because I don't know how much it reflects on the Medina or not. But on the other hand, at the same time, they Aguda joined. Aguda made a political party. Mizrahi joined. See if they stayed in the opposition, right? But they participated in the political process, right? Complicated, right? So now, part of you might ask, how did such a complicated situation endure, right? The whole thing should have blown up. So. Aside from having a common enemy of being attacked by the Arabs from the outside, which some people speculate Ben Gurion would have not proclaimed the Medina and left it as like a protectorate, whatever its legal standing was. It would have saved a lot of lives. That's still a debate. You should know historical record. Ben Gurion he won by one vote. The council made the decision: declare the state. Don't declare the state. It was by one vote. It was a very slimmest majority ever that decided to declare the state. People that were Ben Gurion's friends, that were in the same council, said, "Don't. It'll be a bloodbath." Who knows? We just focus on the miraculous victories, but a lot of lives were lost also, right? But let's go back on the religious and secular, which hasn't resolved itself until this day, 70 some odd years later, right? What were they all thinking? Like how, because at the end of the day, they decided to make some agreements of coexistence. Whether it's the deal that they made about the yeshiva boys not serving in the army, which they're always trying to undo, or modify. Both sides are always trying to modify, right? And the certain status quo about getting and kiddushin, which are always being challenged, and whatever stuff. How did it happen, right? Because at the time, both sides were naive. Both sides were equally naive, if we may say, looking back. Right? The religious, certainly the Mizrahi, they were very pro-Zionist, but let alone the Aguda. The people who were less Zionist, right? But they all had a basic vision that we are going to have a positive influence or to be makar of these people. They will see the error of their ways and they will become religious. So we can agree to this like crazy, jagged situation where in some ways they're our worst enemies and in some ways we cooperate and in some ways they support us. This crazy, which hasn't changed in 70 some odd years. We can do it because they will see the error of their ways and they will do tshuva. Almost the optimism of Rav Kook himself, I think, permeated all the Jews who were living in Israel at the time, all religious Jews, even the ones that did not identify as Mizrahi, on some level, had that in their head, right? Right. And what did the secular think? Right? We'll make concessions towards the religious because we're going to influence them little by little. We're going to get them enlightened, right? And they will come over to us, and we're going to secularize them. I heard from my Rabbi, Moshe Shapiro, Zichron Levrach, tell us once here that supposedly Ben Gurion is on record saying, 20 years after the Medina was founded, Lama Madayim Po, why are they still here? They thought, they would, secularize us by little enlightening us. 70 some odd years later, situation hasn't changed. Both sides were naive that they would convince and win over the other side to their side. The bottom line is it's complex. If now complexity is not so hard to juggle intellectually, right? In the sense that why can't we just say, well, be thankful for what's good and be critical of what's bad, and okay, so say hallow without a bracha. If you're, at least it won't be a bracha of vatah on the side that you're wrong. Rav Soloveitchik's, concern about harezim machar from Megadif. You're not saying it because the sun is shining. You're saying it because of the Medina. So this day is a little bit different than the other days of the week. Let's say, we could sort through this in touch, but it's hard to, it's emotionally hard to juggle because when you're excited and happy, it's hard to be critical. And when you're critical, it's hard to be happy. And that's why we haven't reached a consensus even 70 years later. If you ask me, if we would be without emotion, we probably could, reach a level-headed approach of juggling, a way of being grateful for this, of what's happened, and being critical of this. But it's emotionally impossible to juggle. Coupled with the fact that at least in Israel, there's just an ongoing culture war. Okay, look, any other questions? Any other questions? All right, look, we've been on the air for nearly an hour, so we'll call the night a good vach. Anyone who didn't count Omer, I counted already. And when I counted, believe me, you're not Motzei hearing a recorded voice. So I could say that tonight is 70 days of the Omer. And if you heard this, there's no problem whatsoever. This is not a human voice that you're hearing. By the time you will be hearing it, as I see, there's no people in the chat room. So if you're listening to this tonight, Motzei Shabbos, don't forget to count the Omer. And we will see everyone again next Thursday night at 10 p.m. Subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll always get notifications, and that way I won't have to send out reminders. Okay, good vach, source Thomas, and keep safe.